Sirenik or Sireniki Eskimos are former speakers of a very peculiar Eskimo language in Siberia, before they underwent a language shift rendering it extinct. The peculiarities of this language among Eskimo languages amount to the extent that it is proposed by some to classify it as a standalone third branch of Eskimo languages. The total language death of this peculiar remnant means that now the cultural identity of Sirenik Eskimos is maintained through other aspects. Slight dialectical difference in the adopted Siberian Yupik language, sense of place, including appreciation of the antiquity of the settlement Sirenik. Location. At the beginning of the 20th century, speakers of the Sirenik Eskimo language inhabited the settlements of Sirenik, Uk, and some small villages stretching to the west from Sirenik along southeastern coasts of the Chukchi Peninsula. As early as in 1895, Uk was already a settlement with mixed population of Sirenik Eskimos and Ungazig men. Language. The Eskimo population of settlement have formerly spoken Eskimo language with several peculiarities not only among Eskimo languages, but even compared to Aleutian. For example, dual number is not known in Sirenik Eskimo, while most Eskimo Aleutian languages have dual, including the neighboring Siberian Yupik relatives. The peculiarities amounted to mutual unintelligibility with Siberian Yupik and Sirenik Eskimos' nearest language relatives. The language is now extinct. Language differences meant Sirenik Eskimos had to speak either Siberian Yupik or Chukchi, an unrelated language, to communicate with the neighboring Siberian Yupik. These were distinct, mutually unintelligible languages, not just dialects. The linguistic classification of Sirenik Eskimo language is still under debate. It is sometimes regarded as a third branch of Eskimo, but is also sometimes classified as a Yupik language. The last native speaker of Sirenik Eskimo, VYIE, died in January 1997. Thus, the language is extinct, and today Sirenik Eskimos speak Siberian Yupik language and/or Russian. History. Little is known about Sireniki history, besides some conjectures based on linguistical consideration. Sirenik Eskimo culture has been influenced by that of Chukchi. Location. Sireniki is an old settlement. It has existed at least for 2,500 years. It is the only Eskimo village in Siberia that has not been relocated, even during the assimilation policy. This fact is a part of establishing recent cultural identity of Sireniki Eskimos. Diachronic linguistics. Little is known about the history of the Sirenik Eskimo language. The peculiarities of the Sirenik language may be the result of a supposed long isolation from other Eskimo groups, and contact with speakers of unrelated languages for many centuries. Influence by Chukchi language is clear. There are evidences that this small language had at least two territorial dialects in the past, although the number of its speakers was very few even at the end of the 19th century. Cultural identity. The total language death of Sirenik Eskimo language means that now the cultural identity of Sirenik Eskimos is maintained through other aspects. Some of these factors are still of linguistic nature, although during the language shift the language of Ungazig has been adopted, but they speak it with some variation, making a dialect. Younger generations do not speak any Eskimo language, they speak Russian, but the cultural identity is maintained not only through linguistic factors, there is also a sense of place concerning the village. Sirenik is the only Eskimo settlement in Siberia that has not been relocated, thus it has preserved its 2,500-year-long anciency. The cultural identity of other ethnic groups living in Sirenik settlement has been researched as well. Spiritual culture. At one time, traditional spiritual practices were prohibited by authorities. Still, some knowledge about these ways survive. The last shaman in Sireniki died around 1990. Since then there has been no shaman in the village. Scholars observed shamanic practices among the Sireniki in the early 20th century. A folklore tale text mentions a feast that could possibly include shamanic features. Folklore. Animals. In the folklore, we can find the motif of the benevolent spider. In many tales, the spider saves the protagonist from peril with its cobweb, capable of lifting the endangered hero up to the sky. The same motif is present also in Siberian Yupik folklore. The spider is a benevolent creature also in another Sirenik Eskimo tale, where she desires the gift of eternal life for people. Old age followed by rejuvenation. In this question, the spider is standing in debate with the beetle. The latter proposes that human life should end in death. Also, some other animals can be presented in folklore as helpers of people: loon, fox, wolf, mouse, deer. As for malevolent powers, devils belong to such dangers. They can feature in the shape of human, animal, or fantastic beings. As mentioned, beetle can be presented as malevolent for people. Folklore can feature man fighting with a big worm. Space and time. Mythology of this culture can reveal some beliefs about time and space. Temporal dilation motif. There is a motif in some Paleo-Asiatic cultures. Wandering people, after a long absence, observe that they have remained young compared to the children who remained at home. Sirenik Eskimos have such a tale as well. The protagonist, returning home after a long travel, must face with the fact that his son has become an old man. More familiar examples of folklore from the world presenting such kind of temporal dilation motifs: Urashima Taro and Rip Van Winkle. Celestial motifs. Another tale presents the sky as an upper world where people can get to and return from, and experience adventures there, communicate with people living there, kill a big worm, observe the earth from up through a hole, descend back to the earth. Magic. Several Eskimo peoples had beliefs in usage of amulets, formulae. Furthermore, several peoples living in more or less isolated groups understand natural phenomena on a personal level. There are imagined beings resembling to human but differing as well. As for Sirenik Eskimos, in one of the tales, we find the motif of the effective calling of natural phenomena for help in danger. An eagle is pursuing people on the ice, and a woman begins to talk about calling wind and frost. Then at once the river freezes in, and the eagle freezes onto the ice. Some tale examples only. The short summaries follow. Quotation marks refer not to literate citation, they just separate remarks from tale summaries. Cormorants. An animal tale, taking place on a cliff near the so-called fast ice edge, narrating a conflict between a cormorant and a raven family. The raven wants to steal and eat a child of the cormorant bear by deceit, but one of the cormorants notices the trick and turns it against the raven so that the robber eats its own child unknowing. Yari. The sample of a loon's cry is just an illustration. It is not linked to any ethnographic record. It is only of ethological relevance. This tale shows Chachi people influence. Moreover, it may be a direct borrowing. It is an example of the reindeer genre, presenting conflicts among different groups for seizing reindeer herds. The tale features also magical animal helpers. Cousins. A Chachi tale contains almost the same series of motifs. The Chachi tale begins with the girls finding a skull incidentally. Besides that, in the Chachi tale, the girl, just after having been abandoned by her parents, begins to accuse the skull and push it with her feet rudely, and on the visit of her returning parents, she seemingly forgives them, but kills them by deceit. A related tale has been collected also among Ungazimite, like the Sirenik variant. Also the Ungazimi one begins with the incest of cousins and the following infanticide. But it is the father of the girl who wants to kill his own daughter, and the father of the boy persuades him to kill the boy instead. At the end of the tale, the girl shows no sign of revenge, and it is the boy who initiates something that petrifies the parents. Man with two wives. The author mentions the time dilation motif, present among several Paleo-Asian peoples. The text of the tale itself does not contain a direct mentioning of time dilation caused by travel or absence. The protagonist's remaining young seems to be rather the result of a blessed spoken by the old man the protagonist has saved. Man. The same or similar motifs can be found also among Ungazigmit. Moreover, an Ungazigmi tale extends the story with the further life of the girl after having been pulled up to the sky by the Benevolent Spider. Taboo. Like several other Eskimo groups, the inhabitants of Sirenik had beliefs prohibiting certain activities that were thought to be disadvantageous in a magical way. Carrying an uncovered drum on the street was thought to trigger stormy weather. Bad weather was the supposed effect of burning seaweed on campfire. 2. A great deal of the taboos were thought to serve chances of survival and sustenance, securing abundance of game. Several of them restricted the exploitation of resources. Shamanism, like Eskimo cultures themselves. Examples of shamanism among Eskimo peoples can be diverse. During the Stalinist and post-Stalinist periods, shamanism was prohibited by authorities. Nevertheless, some knowledge about shamanistic practices survive. The last shaman in Sirenik died before 2000, and since then there has been no shaman in the village. Earlier in the 20th century, shamanistic practices could be observed by scholars in Sirenik. And also a folklore text mentions a feast that could include shamanistic features. Recent history and today. The Sirenik Eskimo maintain traditional subsistence skills, such as building large skin boats, similar to the Yupik among Siberian Yupik, and Umiak among many other Eskimo peoples. Poverty, unemployment, and alcoholism challenge the community. Medical care and supplies to the settlement can be inadequate.